Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. In this video, I'll be showing you how to use the CI853 communication module for the ABB AC800M controller and communicate with a device via Modbus RTU using RS-232. So let's get started. Often in the world of industrial automation, we run into the need of having to communicate multiple devices with a PLC because we need to know the data such as operating conditions and overall operating status to support activities that help run the plant more efficiently and safely. Many of these devices are not furnished with an Ethernet port. Many of them come with a serial communication port supporting RS-232 and a communication protocol such as Modbus RTU. The ABB AC800M controller supports serial communication through the usage of the CI853 communication interface. The CI853 communication interface supports RS-232 and multiple other serial communication protocols such as Modbus RTU. In today's example, we're going to be connecting the CI853 with an I/O module using serial point-to-point communication. Before we can begin the configuration, there are multiple details that we need to know so that the configuration is performed correctly. Information such as the communication settings of both devices must be known. The addressing scheme of the Modbus register is also information that we need to have available. The cable pinouts is going to be very important information, otherwise we will not be able to establish communication. The cable pinouts are usually found in each of the device's manuals, as well as the Modbus memory map of the device that we're trying to communicate with. The workflow that we're going to follow is generally divided in 3 steps. The first step involves installing the cable. For this, we need to perform a proper cable selection and its installation, where we measure lengths, paths, etc. Then, we can begin the configuration on the CI853 module using the ABB engineering software. Finally, the rest of what we need to do is we need to create the Modbus read application that it will be pulling the data from these devices. In this video, we will only be focusing on the last 2 steps.
The first thing that we need to do is to connect the libraries that we're going to use in our project. Here I'm going to look for the Modbus library. There it is. Click OK. Now we'll look for the hardware libraries, which are the CI853 and the Modbus hardware library, which will allow us to communicate via the Modbus RTU protocol. Now we connected both to the application and to the controller. Expand the application side. Go to libraries, connect library. Now we're going to go to the controller. We expand the libraries. We connect both the CI853 and the Modbus library. And now we're going to create an instance. So we expand the controller. We insert new unit. We give it a name. It can be any name that you want. Now we click insert. The next thing is to instantiate the Modbus server. So we right click on the first port. We verify that the settings are okay. And now we create the instance. So expand Modbus and again give it a name. And click on insert. We just verify that the settings are compatible with what we have, particularly that the type says master, and that is all as far as libraries goes and the configuration of the hardware. Now we can prepare the application. So we right click applications and we're going to select new program. We're going to give it a name that is related to the type of communication that we're going to have. We hit OK and we open the editor. The first thing that we need to do is to create the variables that we're going to utilize to configure the function blocks. I already know which variables the function blocks need together with the data types. For more information, you can always look at the online help of the tool to get more details about the data types and all the variables that each one of the function blocks that we're going to utilize will need. So we're going to need a channel, that's a data type string. We're going to need a variable for the partner, which is also data type string. We're going to need to verify that the communication is valid. We're going to need to detect if there's an error in the communication. And I always want to know what the status of the blocks is, and that's a data type double integer. And we're going to need some logic to initiate the request once the communication has been validated. And for that, we're going to use a request variable, and we're going to utilize a pulse generator. And the data type is time, and the pulse duration is going to be 1 second. And the output from the pulse generator, we're going to do that as a pulse request, data type bool. And we're going to need the variables to configure the Modbus read block. To start with, we're going to need a Modbus address that we're going to start our query at. And I know it's register 40,101. And we're going to need to validate that the query was successful. Again, we want to detect if there are any errors, and we want to know the status of the block. And finally, we need to declare the variables where we're going to store the data from the Modbus registers that we're going to query, starting at register 40,101, and I know it's 5 registers, so I'm going to declare the registers from 40,101 all the way to 40,105. As far as variables goes, this is all that we're going to need. So now we can declare the function blocks. Oh, but first let me add the initial value for the channel and the partner. And this corresponds to the location on the hardware tree of the Modbus communication interface. So now we're going to declare the function blocks. Like I said, we're going to need a pulse generator. We're going to need the Modbus connect block. And we're going to need the Modbus read block. And we're going to need 5 parameters because it's 5 registers that we're reading. We give them a name to each one of these blocks. Now we can start the programming. I'm going to use structured text language. So I declare the name of the block, open parentheses, and the block parameters pop up. And now from here, I can just start plugging in the variables that we just declared a moment ago. So the channel over the channel, now we look for partner, the validation, the error. We put the status. Now we're gonna put some logic that if the connection is valid, then the request is going to be true. And if the connection is not valid, then the request is going to be false. And we're going to use this variable to enable and disable the pulse generator that we need to send the queries. So now we can declare the read function block. So we give the name of the function block, open parentheses, and just like before, we start plugging in the variables that we just declared. Now the ID variable is going to be the same both for the connect block and for the read block. And the request is going to be the output from the pulse generator. So now we connect the valid variable for the read, the error and the stat, and we're going to connect the variables where we're going to be storing the information from the Modbus device that we're trying to read. We just update the names and we save and close. So right now we have practically everything that we need except for the pulse generator itself. So we declare the pulse generator block, open parentheses, and we start connecting the variables. So period. Now the pulse duration and the pulse output, which is our Modbus request. So now we can do a quick check that there are no errors and we're done with the configuration. After performing a controller download, you can open the program editor in online mode. This will display live data coming from the device if the communication has been successfully established. The enable communication variable must be set to true. If everything has been properly configured, the communication variable connection valid will show true. This will in turn generate one pulse with a duration of 1 second every 2 seconds to request the data from the device. If all the Modbus register address have been properly configured, the valid variable will show true every time a read request is executed successfully. If you run into any trouble, you can always use the help menu that you can access from the toolbar at the top. In the index, just search for Modbus and select status codes. This will show you the meaning of all the codes that you can get on your function blocks. Well guys, I hope you liked this video and found it useful in your device interfacing activities. Until next time,